This is Tom Bain, and this is Wine, Money, and Song. If you find the content of this channel of interest, please subscribe. And if you have like-minded friends who are interested in wine, please tell them about it. And in comments, please let us know what subjects you would like us to cover and if there's wines you want us to react to. Wine as an investment. Yes and no. I will explain. The prices of collectible wines have soared the last 5 or 10 years. And a lot of people want to get in on those soaring wine prices. There's been tremendous gains in certain areas like Burgundy. Burgundy is very scarce, very small production, so their prices have gone wacko. And of course, there are the Bordeaux's that have gone up in price a lot, certain ones. But what makes a wine investable? There are 5 factors. The first factor is the producer of the wine who actually makes it. Second is the scarcity or the rarity of the wine. How much wine do they produce? Third is the vintage, which is very important. If you're going to invest in wine, collect wine, you should buy great vintages if you're collecting. 4 is the aging potential of the wine, the longevity of the wine. Can the wine age for 5, 10, 15, 20 years plus? That's important because you're going to be holding that wine longer than 6 months to a year generally. And 5 is ratings. If you get great ratings, it's going to push the price of the wines up. So let me show you a few of the collectible wines and wines that have gone up a lot. Right here is 1982 Chateau Lafite Rothschild. And I remember buying this at wholesale in 1984 for about $50. No, not even 50, about $40 a bottle. Right now, it's around $4,000 selling price now. Not a bad investment. And then you have Grand Cru Burgundy. This is a DRC wine, Domaine Romanée-Conti. This is the Echezot. And what makes this rare is it's actually rare. They have 8 different wines they make, and they only make around 7,000 cases for all 8 wines. And some of the wines have a few hundred cases. So this wine was around $150 when I bought it. This is the 99 Echezot. And it's worth around $4,000 now a bottle. Or did I say 7? I think it's 7. We'll have to check that. And another Burgundy that people go after is Armand Rousseau. Any of the Rousseau wines are skyrocketed lately. And this is the Clos Saint-Jacques, and it's around $2,500, $3,000, and it's just going crazy. What's also collectible and investable? Grand Marque champagnes. Grand Marque champagnes like Taittinger Comte de Champagne. This is the 2008, which was about a little below $200. You try to get it now, it's around $350. So it's gone up 75% in 4 years or so. That's not bad. And of course, we have 2 different vintages of Roederer Cristal. 2 great vintages, 2008 and 2012. And both of these wines have almost doubled already. And other Grand Marque champagnes that you would consider investing in are Pau Roger, Cuvée, Sir Winston Churchill, and Dom Perignon, of course. And there are a number of other ones that are very, very, very investable. So there you have it. And there are California wines like Screaming Eagle. Screaming Eagle at release is around $3,000 or $4,000. But there's only a few hundred cases of that. And then you have Dominos, you have other players that just fetched Schrader, Stagecoach, all those wines. Opus One, and get 400 or 500 right out of the bat for those wines. So those are the investable wines. So far, it sounds pretty easy peasy. You just buy a rare wine from a great producer in a great vintage that can age a long time and gets high ratings, and you're going to make a lot of money. No. It's not quite that easy. There are certain barriers and problems with wine investment, and I will go into that, but remember that great producers of wine, and there's probably 1% of the producers of wine are collectible. All right? So that leaves 99% of the other wines out in the cold. And that is key because they have a history of making great wines. And then, of course, rarity, as I said, which is not necessarily the most important thing, but when there's a minute amount of wine, like I said about the DRC wines, that really drives the prices up. The vintage, personally, if you want to make money in wine, you should buy the great vintages. And the reason why you buy the great vintages is because everyone looks at the vintage first, and anything attached to that vintage, people think it's a great wine because it comes from a great vintage, which is not necessarily true. There are some wines that come from so-called off or average vintages that are outstanding and great, and you can get them at a cheap price, but they're not going to go up in value like the wines from the great vintages. So that's not investable, but because it's not going to go up much, but for your enjoyment, it's a great value. So you got to weigh those factors. And of course, the aging potential. You're not going to buy Beaujolais as an investable because it's not going to, doesn't have the ability to age long. And the ratings are very important, especially if they get 98 points, 99 points, 100 points. Once those points come out, 100 points comes out, the value of the wine sometimes doubles. And that's one of the few times you can buy the wines quickly and sell them quickly. Otherwise, you're going to hold on to the wine for a long time. All right. So that's one of the problems of investing in wine. You have to hold the wine for a long time generally, 5 to 10 years, and that's a long time to wait on an investment. So keep that in mind. It's not an in and out thing like day traders do with stocks. I said if you get a 100-point wine, it'll spike, but you have to be lucky. Once it gets 100 points, the supply runs out. Everyone runs out and buys it. And the chance of you getting it is nil or very, very small. And also a problem with investing in wine, it's a pretty large capital outlay. If you're going to start investing wines for profit, you got to lay out $20,000 worth of wine. You have to buy a few cases of this, a few cases of that. Easily can be $20,000. Easy, just to get started. And then you have the middleman come in. Buy it from the retailer, he has a margin. He has a markup. And if you go through an auction house and buy at auction, which a lot of these collectible wines, that's where you're going to go through, the average buyer's premium is around 25%. That's a pretty big chunk. All right? So keep that in mind. And then you have shipping, which is very expensive now. And it's really having an impact on prices of all wines. And then you have storage. Now, as I said, it's 5 or 10 year proposition, a lot of these wines. So you have to keep them in a cool, dark place, a very, very stable environment. And if you don't have that and you have it under the stairs somewhere, the wines are not going to be at its peak, and sometimes you're going to ruin the wines. So you have to build that in. It costs money to store wines. Generally, people buy lockers and they pay for their locker $100 a month, depending how big it is. And that can come into thousands of dollars a year for storage. And if your wines are worth a lot of money, generally you have to have an insurance policy in case you have a fire, a flood, someone comes in, or a tornado caves in your house and it's ruined. That can be money. So are you getting me? this isn't that easy. There's a lot of things that go into investing in wines. And I think maybe you're saying, hey, this isn't such a snap thing. And it's not. And then, if you're lucky enough to hold the wines, sell the wine at a profit, what are the tax consequences? The capital gains. And you got to think about that. So personally, the way that I look at wines as when I buy them and they go up in value a lot, I get great pleasure in knowing that I made a good buy. And when I have friends over the house, that I put a wine on the table that is now going for $300 a bottle, and I paid $60 a bottle. Makes me feel smart, you know? And I like the idea of serving something very special to people who are going to really appreciate it, and knowing that I paid a very smart price for it. As far as myself, when I have wines that have gone up a lot, I trade with other friends of mine who collect wines. We barter. I'll barter a certain vintage of Bordeaux for the newer vintage. Like, I'll give you 2 bottles of Lafite 82 for 4 bottles of 1990 Lafite. And that's a smart way of trading without having all the problems with all the middlemen and going through the tax consequences. And that's a good way of helping each other fill their cellar with wines that they need. So let's go over again. If you want to invest in wine, there are traded funds that you can actually invest, and you should go online and take a look. Trading fund stocks, they actually have indexes that you can, and there is a service called LiveX, LIV-EX, that shows you a value every day of sections of wine that are collectible. They have a Bordeaux index, they have a Burgundy index, they recently did a California index, and you can follow the values. But if you don't want to own them, the wine itself, you can actually buy a fund that buys those things, and just like you would any mutual fund. So you can look those up. There are a number of them. But the best way, if you want to invest in wine, is probably wine futures. Right now, the 2021 vintage of Bordeaux has just started selling futures. And what futures are is the wine is still in the barrel in Bordeaux, and it's not coming out for another year. But you can buy them right now, and hopefully you're going to buy them at a discount. Why else would you do it? Well, there is another reason why you do it, because that assures you of getting hard-to-get wines a lot of time. And to me, that's the most important reason to buy wine futures, is that you have those wines right away and you're not going to get shut out. And generally, future prices are prices that they should be near the low. There are exceptions, and that's why I say this isn't easy. The 2009 and 2010 Bordeaux's were sold at futures at very high prices. The first growths were over $1,000, $1,200. First tranche, first prices out of the gate. And 2 or 3 years later, you could buy those wines for $800, $700 a bottle. So you were in the hole by over a third. And it's finally come into equilibrium about a year or two ago. The 2009s and the 2010s have lifted themselves close to what they sold for 10 years ago, and that's not a good investment. You're sitting there on 10 years and you're basically flat. So it isn't easy. But wine futures, excuse me, as I said, are a good way to procure wines before they come out. And how it works, depending upon the retailer, you pay them the money, either 100% of it, and it assures you of the wine when it comes out in a year or two, or some retailers take 50%. And then when the wine is delivered, you pay the other 50%. And these are the way of tying up wines like Bordeaux, especially. Now, they have begun to sell futures in other types of wines, but not anything like Bordeaux. Bordeaux is the sweet spot if you want to buy investable wine, especially wine futures. So, to finish my point, wine as an investment, not easy. Not easy. A lot of stuff goes in it. You have to commit yourself. You got to have the passion, you got to have the room, or else you're going to be paying storage fees. But the whole idea is to own great wines at good prices. And if you can achieve that, that should satisfy you that you bought something and it's gone up a lot in value. And doing that in the rest of your life will assure success. But with wine, you put it on the table and you know you paid half the price, makes it much more enjoyable. So where does that leave us? Well, you have a choice to make. Are you willing to jump through all those hoops that you have to go through, barriers to making an investment in wine and making a profit? Are you willing to do that? Or are you just going to buy wines for pleasure? Personally, unless you want to be in the wine business, I would stick on the pleasure side and not go into the wine business, because that's what you have to do to really make money on wines.